Hi, I'm Greg.
And I'm Leanne,
Welcome to Empowered Now,
where we save humanity
one relationship at a time.
We all struggle from time to time connecting with and understanding others and ourselves.
So we hope to encourage you to live a more authentic and empowered life by sharing what we've learned as coaches and as individuals.
Empowered Now is LGBTQ2IA, alternative lifestyle, poly, and kink friendly.
Thanks for joining us
and enjoy the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 12 of Empowered Now. This week we are looking at advice for Poly and CNM newbies. And this came about because I created a document for one of our support groups, and shout out to them. They asked me to put it in their files, which is lovely. And so if you would like a copy of this, you can certainly contact us and we will get it to you for sure. And it's one of the sort of most, I would say, comprehensive lists I've seen. I don't know. What do you think, honey?
It's pretty comprehensive indeed. Yeah, I really like it. I mean, I think it covers pretty much everything that we've certainly experienced in our time as poly/CNM on various parts of the spectrum. And I know for me personally, having something like this when I started out 15, 16 years ago would have been hugely beneficial. So yeah, so it's definitely a fantastic tool. So thank you for putting it together.
Yeah, you're welcome. So there's 26 items on the list. We're not going to cover all of them today because that would be a really long podcast. Mm-hmm. We'll probably get through about half, which is why we encourage you, if you're interested, to reach out and let us know if you'd like the list sent to you. So let's take a look. We're going to cover sort of the top ones that matter most to us in our journey. I've been in and out of Poly and CNM for 30 years. I can't believe I say that out loud, but I do, and it's weird. It's like in my head, I'm still 30, but
right.
So my first marriage was what we called open back then. We didn't really have a polyamory community or a lot of resources to draw from, and we didn't have a lot of language around it. So that was the terminology at the time. And in my case, I was the hinge of a V. And
do you want to explain what that means to people that don't know?
If I'm the hinge of a V, I would be at the bottom and I would have two partners on either side of me, right? And they are not connected to one another. Mm-hmm. So that's how it differs from, say, a triad where everybody is connected with a relationship with one another. And triads, people generally use different terminology for them, but they can be romantic and intimate, or they might be platonic relationships, still loving and considered a polyamorous triad.
Right. Some people use the term throuple, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a good place to start because that's on the top. That's at pretty much the top of the list. And I think that's something that you and I experience quite a bit with our clients, especially the clients that are new to poly.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot is people saying, I want to add a third.
Ooh.
Right. And so,
sorry.
Yeah, no. But the interesting thing though is that for me anyway, like you, I've been doing poly not for 30, but for 15, 16 years. And when I started out, there wasn't, at least I wasn't aware of this language. I wasn't aware that I was doing it in an unhealthy way. And I was until I started to really do some digging and stuff. And one of those things was this idea that, and I got involved with poly through the BDSM community. And it's fairly prevalent in the BDSM community, but not everybody is poly in the BDSM community, but quite a few people are. And so as a Dom, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have this harem of submissives. And this is poly technically. It's under the CNM, consensually non-monogamous, spectrum, right? But in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to add all of these women to my harem of submissives, right? So some would say that that's a very unhealthy way to do it. And I would be one of those some at this point in my life. But back then I wasn't. Back then I thought it was the cat's meow. I thought it was the shit in the shinola, as it were. But the reality is that when we take a look at adding a third, the expectation of that person that steps into that relationship is ginormous, number one. And number two, I think expecting somebody to have a relationship and to get along with two different people is a lot to ask, right?
Mhm.
I mean, what do you think? Like,
Well, there's a couple of things that come up. I think that is a big ask. Yes. I note in the list that triads are best formed when they form organically out of relationships that you're already currently having that are primarily separate, but that you maybe develop into what's called kitchen table poly, where everybody is friendly with each other and can hang out, right? Spend time together. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a lot of time. It could mean that it's just the odd, gathering, and they can manage and negotiate that together willingly and happily. Out of kitchen table poly, sometimes triads develop organically. Thirds, the word third denotes their position as less than. And that's one of the problems that people have with it. And you're bringing someone into a relationship. That's another way of saying this that is kind of dismissive to the person who's coming in
I think it's
and
devaluing
being
too.
asked to come in.
Yeah, it's devaluing as well.
Yeah. So I don't know. I would, there's a few ways to look at this. If you're on the consensual non-monogamy side of things and you're looking for a play partner, or you're in the kink community and you're looking for a play partner as a couple, you're looking for that person, I think it's much more acceptable to search for that person as a unit and to, date them as a unit and to spend time together as always, the three of you. What happens in the poly community, because the shift is more toward developing fully realized relationships, is that the ideal isn't that. The ideal is to have fully realized relationships that are authentic with each individual.
So being in a triad means that you're actually in 7 different relationships at once. And like you're like 7, well, how does that number happen? Well, there's yourself and your nesting partner. There's your nesting partner and the girlfriend or the boyfriend or the new partner, let's say. Okay, so that's 2. There's the relationship with your girlfriend that your girlfriend or your nesting partner has with the new partner. So that's 3. And I think I'm screwing this up already. Number 4 is the relationship that all 3 of you have. And then 5, 6, and 7 is the relationship that you have with each other, with yourselves as individuals.
Correct.
So there's actually 7 relationships that you're engaged with in a triad dynamic, and that's a lot to manage. And to have a new person just step into that and be okay with that, and to ask of that right away, when you're dealing with emotions and you're dealing with all of the new energy, new relationship energy, and all of that stuff, that's a lot to ask. So as you pointed out, it's best to let it develop organically. Allow each relationship to become whatever it needs to be and whatever it wants to be. And maybe one relationship is platonic and the other relationship is more intimate and more sexual, or whatever, right? But trying to force that is it's kind of unethical too. Like, it's like you can only date us if you date us as 2 people. Well, each one of you is an individual. So what does the individual, the new person in this case, what do they get out of that if they have strong feelings for one but not so strong feelings for the other? But the only way they can express those strong feelings is to fake it with the other.
Oh, awful, right?
Right. So there's a lot of, I don't think we want to get too carried away with this one particular piece, but there's a lot of things to unpack with that. So really the idea here is that just don't try to add a third. Let those kinds of things develop organically over time.
So when we're talking about language around this, I think it this lends itself well to the term secondary as well, primary and secondary. So when we're talking about adding a third, that language is problematic because it's devaluing to the person, right? And also sets up a lot of couples privilege. So the idea being that the couple is immutable as a unit, they cannot be affected by this introduction of a new relationship, and that their needs, wants, and desires will always come first and be a priority. Now, couples privilege, if you're a couple and you're doing polyamory or CNM, it's really hard to get away from. What matters more is how you manage the privilege that you do have as a couple, how you communicate with your partners about what that looks like for you. And if in fact it exists at all, because, you know, some people on the sort of relationship anarchy end of things might not want to be labeled as a couple, right? But might actually be functionally working as a couple, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of language around this, but the point is when we're dealing with new partners, if we refer to our coupledom as the primary relationship and anyone else outside of that is secondary, again, that's devaluing to that person. And even if we are, you know, descriptively hierarchical, which means we're describing what we're actually doing. This is our situation. We operate as if there is a hierarchy because we have shared finances or children or a home together, we're nesting partners, and we make a lot of decisions related to family and health and well-being together. That's an awareness of we are functionally hierarchical and there is some privilege here, and it does kind of look like this is a primary consideration some of the time. And then moving away from that, you can, you know, try to push back a little bit what that means to you as a couple and say, okay, we're going to limit our influence over one another. We're going to disentangle. We're not going to have veto power over who our partner can and cannot date, right? We're going to step back from the idea of controlling the situation or trying to set down rules, move into the space of negotiating agreements and setting boundaries instead, right? So this is all kind of the same conversation. Right. When we're talking about couples privilege and how it looks and what you can do about it. And then the other side of that is the, you know, people who really want those labels, who really want to be prescriptive about their hierarchy. So this is our rule. We must maintain this relationship as a priority. This will always be a priority, etc. So in prescriptive hierarchy, that's when it can get really hurtful for a person who's a new partner, right? It can feel like they have no say in their own relationship. That if they're on a date and the spouse phones, date over, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. And that's completely the opposite of autonomy, right? Which is kind of the aim here anyway.
Well, it certainly is for us. And I think a lot of people starting out feel that they need the hierarchy.
I know I did. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We were in that space where we thought that hierarchy would keep us safe. It was something that we wanted and it felt comfortable for us for a time. And so that's what we engaged in. And we got a lot of pushback for it. I mean, we did. And I think out of that journey for us is how we came to understand and sort of coin the term relationship autonomy. And I think it served its purpose for us. It was where we needed to be at the time. It was something that we felt comfortable with. It was useful for us for a time. And then as we started to really dig into this and started to really unpack the feelings around why we needed hierarchy, that's when we recognized that there was a lot of discomfort underneath that we weren't willing to face, at least for me anyway. And I think that was your experience as well. And so once we dug into that and we started to sit with those uncomfortable feelings and stuff, that's when we started to step away from that need, in our case anyway, to feel hierarchical and be prescriptive about it. It's still somewhat descriptive because we live together, we have a life together, we have a home together, we have a family and children, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's an element of that to our relationship. But in our separate relationships with our partners, that doesn't play a role. We go back to those agreements and we negotiate those things and we talk about them and set those boundaries appropriately so that everybody feels seen and heard. and valued at the same level. And I think ultimately that's our goal now.
Yes, I would agree with that. And also, I think we feel more empowered.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know when we were practicing hierarchy, there was a lot more of asking permission.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of wore down our positive feelings about poly in some ways, because we felt that we didn't have a lot of control over our own decision making. So stepping into autonomy, while there was some growth there that had to happen and some unpacking that had to happen around what that looked like, was also really empowering and really freeing, because we recognized we didn't have to ask permission anymore.
Right, exactly. And it's funny you say that, because I know I do this, and I think you do it as well. But sometimes when we're doing scheduling and all of that stuff, we'll look at each other and we'll ask each other, hey, are you okay with this? Or, hey, can I do that? Because we still have some of that sort of language in there, right? And so we're even trying to change the language around it and say, instead of saying, can I do this? Maybe say, hey, I'm going to do this, and I just want to check in and make sure it's not going to interfere with anything that I might not be aware of.
Great.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of, it is a language thing, but I think it's a very important distinction to make. And I think, talking about advice for newbies, looking at that and getting curious about why hierarchy is important to you. I really invite you to do that. And just, and if at the end of that investigation, you still decide that hierarchy is what you need, great. Just make sure that you're completely transparent about it with everybody involved, and that you're not being duplicitous with yourself or with anyone else in the process of that, and that you're open about the communication and the reasons why hierarchy is important to you.
For sure, because sometimes we can have, sort of hidden hierarchy or hidden couples privilege, or, the disguised veto
Yeah, the disguised
is a
veto.
problem, a
Yeah.
really big problem for people, because it's like, oh, we don't have veto power over who our spouses date or our partners date, but I'm going to make it really difficult if you choose to date this person.
And
Right?
sometimes it's important to acknowledge that the person that's making it difficult, so to speak, isn't necessarily doing that with awareness. That's just that they're doing it unconsciously, right? And so that's where the boundaries come into play. It's like, hey, you know what? These behaviors and these actions are bringing up these feelings for me. And so we need to unpack this, and I need to understand why you're behaving the way that you're behaving. Right? Because oftentimes the person that's doing it isn't aware. It's a very fear-based response. It comes from a space of lack, right? My partner's got, new relationship energy, and they're really focused and super focused on their new partner. This person that I've relied on and been in a relationship with for, 15 years or 5 years or whatever it is, and they're my secure base. Now, all of a sudden, that security, that foundation starts to get shaken. And so instead of having the tools to be able to open that up and take a look at it, oftentimes what happens unconsciously is that we start to create scenarios where it's very challenging and difficult for our nesting partner to have a successful, healthy, loving relationship with somebody else. And we're not doing it intentionally. We're just not aware that that's what we're doing. So I think it's really important to unpack that when that stuff is brought to you.
Right. Yes. And one of the points in here too is about not setting up the rules, right?
Yep.
So we went through tools versus rules as our first episode. Really important information in there. If you're interested, check it out.
Yeah, it's a really powerful episode. I definitely recommend. I don't think we want to unpack all of that here.
No.
Yeah, I think what we want to do is maybe refer people to that episode and check it out, because it's a huge, especially for folks that are new to poly or any relationship, really.
But one of the things that I think is worth bringing up is that requests of a partner can be made in our desire to self-advocate, right? But these requests are requests. They're not rules. And so some of my clients have heard these terms, and they conflate the two, and they, use them interchangeably, and it's not at all. A request is, would you be comfortable doing this so that I can, whatever I need to from you, right? So I can feel better or get my needs met. I feel like that's another way that, people kind of utilize the terminology in ways that it wasn't meant for, right? Because if you're actually making a request, it's a question.
Well, a request can be a statement. I mean, a request can be a statement. It can be, again, I mean, refer back to the rules versus tools, because we don't want to unpack this too much, but a request can still, I feel like, be a statement. It can be, I'm not getting these needs met, and I need this, this, and this from you in order to make that happen, right? And then so that you put that on the table, you're being very clear, very direct about it, but you're not saying you will do this, this, and this, or else.
Right, yeah.
And that's when it becomes a rule. It becomes a rule when you start to restrict somebody else's behavior or make demands of their behavior. When you're saying, I need something from you, like, I need this, or I need that, or whatever that is, then that's an expression of self. That's an expression of authenticity and vulnerability in a lot of ways, because it's very challenging and difficult to say those things for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's still a request in my mind, but it's a request in the form of a statement versus a request in the form of a question. And if you wanted to make it into a question, you could end it with, are you comfortable with that? Or how do you feel about that?
Right.
But it's still a statement to begin with, right? So anyway, did you want to unpack anything more or talk about anything?
No, that's great.
About that?
I love that.
So the one that I really like here is this comparison. And this is actually the last tip that you have on the list here. Don't compare relationships. And so that's something that I struggle with even now, after 15, 16 years of being in some form of consensual non-monogamy. I still struggle with that comparison piece. So I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what you meant by that when you put that on the list. And maybe we can, talk about it a little bit.
Sure, Greg. I'll take lead on that.
Because, I don't want to get too vulnerable.
Yeah, God forbid. So, you've probably heard the phrase, comparison is the thief of joy.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, and it's based on, it's just true, but it's also based on some teachings of Buddha. So the idea of comparing two individuals as if they were the same person is ridiculous. And once we recognize that, it can help us take a step back from the comparison. And we know from experience in relationships that different people will bring out different parts of you, right? We don't speak the same way to our parents as we do to our friends, as we do to our colleagues. It's all different aspects of our personality that we bring forward. So the experience of even us from their perspective is different, right? So when we consider all of that, it's really a lot easier, I think, to move back from comparing relationships, because when we're saying things like, this partner gives me this and this partner doesn't, or this partner gives this to me in a way that is, completely wonderful and beautiful, and this partner doesn't, right? We're taking away pieces from a relationship that maybe don't even belong there, that maybe don't even need to be part of that relationship. It's like if I go to two different classes, right? I'm in an art class and I'm in a phys ed class. In one, my creative outlet is expressed and explored and utilized and developed, and my talent in that area increases. In the other, my hand-eye coordination, my physical self improves, my overall sense of strength and health and well-being, is addressed. My exercise is a stress buster, all that stuff, right? So these are two separate experiences, and it's kind of like a great analogy for relationships, because we can't really compare them.
Well,
But we do.
often, yes, we do.
Yeah.
Often, and I think one of the things that you've said before that I really like, that really struck me as quite impactful, is along the lines of the comparison that you just used between the two different types of classes. Is, you know, this idea that salad and dessert. You know, I like both. I like salad and I like dessert, right? But I like
Right.
them for two completely different reasons, and
Yeah.
they fire off two completely different sets of internal emotions for me, right?
Mhm.
But they're both great and glorious and wonderful to eat, and I enjoy both
Yeah.
of them equally. I
Yeah.
don't enjoy one more than the other, or maybe yours is steak and chocolate or whatever it is, right? But you know, if you like steak and you like chocolate, then great. But they're two very completely different tastes, but they still
Mhm.
feed you. And the other interesting thing about the comparison that you used just now was that both of those things provide you with growth,
Right. Right.
right? So if you're going to take a look and you must compare, then maybe say, okay, so are both of these things providing, are these both of these things life providing? Are both of these things giving me growth? And if one or the other is not, then that might be a time to get curious about why. Then that might be where the comparison piece comes in. Now, on the flip
Nice.
side of that, thank you. On the flip side of that, for me, I struggle with comparison because I'm constantly comparing myself to my other partner, to my partner's partners,
Mm-hmm.
especially, and I'm going to get vulnerable here, especially
Okay.
when it comes to sex. That's a big one for me. And I've done
Mhm.
a lot of work around it and a lot of discovery around it. But I found that that's the one area I can handle the emotional aspect way more than I can handle the physical sexual aspect of it. And so I find myself being very comparative in my internal dialogue. The stories that I'm telling myself are mononormative in a lot of ways, even to this day. So there's still some of that stuff. So as a new person, if you're experiencing that, what I want you to know first off and foremost is it's okay. It is absolutely okay. You are not alone. And if you're feeling those feelings of comparison, for me anyway, it comes from a place of worthiness. It comes from a place of not feeling secure in the relationship yet and not feeling worthy. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of programming that needs to be sort of unraveled and taken a look at and really dissected, and going back to that comparison piece, the salad and the chocolate, or the two different class, the art class and the gym class or whatever. All of these things can be so wonderful and so amazing in our lives. You know, I mean, even children, like, you know, those with multiple children, you know, I say to people, which one don't you love? Well, you
Mhm.
love them all because they're unique individuals and you treat them differently according to who they are as individuals. But you know, and maybe there are times when you have to prioritize one over the other because one's got to be at the gym class in 5 minutes and the other's got the art class in an hour. So of course that one is going to be a priority over the other one in those moments. But that doesn't mean that one is a priority over the other in life,
Mhm.
right? So
Right.
yeah, so I think that's really important to understand and distinguish, is that comparison piece is there to try to tell you something, and it's telling me something about myself. It's telling me that I need to do some work on myself, and I need to work on my worthiness and try to build a foundation that makes me feel like I have value, so that no matter what happens over there, I know I'm going to be okay, and I'm my own secure base.
Mhm.
So even if you end up falling in love with your partner and you decide that that's the, you know, that's what you want to do, I'm still going to be okay. And
Mhm.
yes, it'll hurt, and yes, it'll be painful, and yes, it'll be uncomfortable and challenging and life altering and all of that stuff, but ultimately I still know that I'm going to be okay and I still have value. And that just
Mhm.
because you made those decisions doesn't lessen my value and my worth.
Right on. I think one of the things to point out there is that not everybody's going to have that same struggle
Right.
when their partner has feelings for someone else or has intimacy with someone else. It's very individual.
Hmm.
And depending on how they process that information and how secure they feel in themselves, in the relationship, you know, they may feel okay with it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's my personal experience as far as comparison goes, and I don't expect that everybody feels that way for sure. And I know my experience is unique to me because it's about me, but I also know that there are other people out there that struggle with comparison. So absolutely, and then there are people that don't. And I think both ways of going about it are perfectly okay. And
Exactly.
And I guess that's the other thing, and it's not on the tips list, at least as far as I know, but I don't think there is any right or wrong here. I think there are behaviors that can be healthy and unhealthy, damaging and hurtful, but I don't think there's any right or wrong here. This isn't a judgment, at least not as far as I'm concerned. I'm not judging how people do poly or how they do their relationships at all, even if they don't do poly. I just think it's about transparency, open communication, and making sure that you're in alignment with your own values, your own core values, and being respectful of the people that you're involved with at all times.
So one of the things that comes up a lot with clients adjusting to the poly lifestyle is what can they do to manage their emotional life? That growth happened kind of as we disentangled too. We were really being mindful about not spending all of our time together, not behaving as a unit, having different interests. Hard to do during COVID, but we managed. We figured it out. And that spending those nights by ourselves helped me, because I grew up in a very social atmosphere where it was almost an expectation that you were social if you were in the house. And so I didn't have a lot of alone time. And I mean, when I did, it was because my brother was playing with his friends and I didn't have a playmate that day. So then I would do my own thing for a while. But it was short-lived and not the norm. And often my brother would bring me with. Thanks, brother. But at the same time, that didn't help me develop my own coping mechanisms of how to play by myself, right? So that's kind of how I approach the date nights. When you're out, I'm like, okay, I got to learn how to play by myself.
Right.
What do I want to do? Where do I want to focus my energies? What do I need doing? What can I address in terms of like my wants? And what haven't I been doing? Right. So maybe there's something that you can pull out that you haven't done for a while, or a skill or a hobby that you can develop, or friendships, relationships with your support system, your family, your friends that you can nurture.
And that includes the relationship with yourself.
Yes, of course it does, Greg. Right? Of course.
I mean, yeah, I had a similar experience. Like I actually now look forward to your date nights, because it means that I get some time to myself. And in my case, I might go downstairs and watch a really, loud, super graphic horror movie or whatever, because you don't dig that. And that's my opportunity to not have to worry about, and just really enjoy it. Right.
Sure.
And same with music, right? So I or go for a bike ride, or whatever, right? Or journal for hours, or sit in the room and just read quietly for hours, right? So it's an opportunity for me to get to know myself and to do things that I enjoy solo, without anybody else, without that need to have anybody else around. But like you, when it first started happening, I felt uncomfortable. I struggled with it. I wanted to be anywhere else but where I was, because I wasn't used to being alone. Which is not true, because I grew up alone, basically. I mean, I grew up around people, but I was a loner very much as a child. So I think like you, when we disentangled and we did the pandemic thing and we had the every other night thing and stuff, I think it was very helpful for both of us to really get that sense of I'm advocating for my boundary here, and I need this alone time. And I know that about myself, that I need alone time in order to recharge. And so that's a really good opportunity for me to do whatever the fuck I want to do, without guilt, without having to worry about how somebody else is going to feel about it, or if it's too loud, or if I need to be doing this instead, et cetera, et cetera. It's a real opportunity for me to just let loose and do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah. So, that's one of the advantages, I think, to poly, that a lot of people don't see initially, and because they're in struggle, right?
Yeah.
And because we've been, programmed, like you said, to really believe in the mononormative narrative, which is about we're joined as one.
Right.
You know, the true love is becoming a unit. And that really isn't necessarily so for everybody. If it is for you and your partner, great. Celebrate that you're both on the same page, you both feel the same way, and it feels healthy to you. Watch for codependency where you feel like you can't make decisions on your own at all, or that you feel kind of like you're losing your identity, which is common. So many people complain about that. I'm in this relationship and I've lost myself. You know, there was this, when I was growing up, there was a lot of women in their 40s who were like leaving their marriages to go find themselves.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, why? You're right here. You're right here inside you. You don't have to go somewhere to go find yourself.
Right.
But it's because of codependency. It's because of that cultural, societal norm of, you know, do everything together, spend all your time together, make all your decisions together, don't, you know, develop as separate human beings.
Right.
And I think that does lead to sort of midlife crisis kind of feelings, right? Where people have been doing this for so long and then they're suddenly like, whoa, I don't know who I am aside from your partner.
Right. You don't have your individual identity anymore. Your identity is so wrapped up in the roles in your life versus who you are and what your value is inherently, right?
Yeah. So this is your chance, if you are exploring CNM or poly, to take those nights off and be yourself, show up for you. You know? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think to that end, and we just touched on this a little bit, but do some disentangling as a couple. Right? Both before, during, and after, I guess, but before and during, certainly, your relationships, and make sure that you're identifying ways that you can be autonomous and that you can express your individuality as a human being, even if, and here's the key, even if maybe your nesting partner is struggling with it, you know, but which leads me to the next one, which is, you know, expect insecurities to pop up. I think they're kind of interrelated, because once we start to disentangle from each other, if you've been in that space of entanglement for a long time, you see entanglement as security. So when you start to disentangle from each other, insecurities will pop up. But that's kind of the point. It's kind of the point is that you want that stuff to come up. You want that stuff to bubble to the surface so that you can deal with it and process it in a safe, sane way. And so that you're not as reactive when shit goes sideways in a relationship and you don't know how to, you know, and you're feeling very emotional about it. If you're disentangling and you're able to identify your own autonomy and your own interests and your own needs and wants and desires separate from another human being, when that shit does go sideways, you're able to feel more empowered in dealing with it and have more resilience in dealing with it. Right? So it's not about avoiding insecurities. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah. And it's not about, you know, sort of taking on their stuff either. Although, you know, we've talked a little bit in previous episodes about being a compassionate partner and being there for your partner. That's a very important part of this. And there's kind of like a tough love way that people do poly and CNM that I don't ascribe to personally, but you know, where you just like immerse your partner in your poly lifestyle and they either sink or swim kind of thing on their own, and their feelings are their feelings and you have nothing to do with them. I think that there's a balance to be struck there where you are able to support your partner, reassure your partner, you know, negotiate with your partner compassionately, understand their perspective of what they need, and try to step into that as much as you can. And the balance isn't in finding equity between relationships or equality. That's really difficult. Doesn't necessarily need to be even equitable. What it needs to be is, you know, are you meeting their needs? Are you showing up for them in a way that meets their needs? And if not, then how can you? And if you can't, you need to be honest about that, right?
For sure.
And then also with the piece about disentangling, one of the signs of codependency is that you become each other's counselor. So when your partner has a disappointment in their other partners, right? You step in and swoop in and pick up the pieces and hold them while they cry. I think there is something to be said for looking at what ways that serves you and what ways it doesn't, and what ways it serves your partner and what ways it doesn't. Because, you know, rescue doesn't help the other person grow. So if, say, I've had a disappointment with partners before and you've acknowledged that pain and you've been there for me to listen, but you have not really, I don't think, stepped into the role of, you know, my caretaker.
Or your protector.
Right? Or my protector.
Which is a man is very difficult to do sometimes, because I'm like, he motherfucker did what? You know, like that emotion comes up, right? You know, but
as a woman too, by the way, just saying.
Sure. I'm not a woman, so I can't speak to that experience.
Well, I'll tell you what. When somebody hurts somebody that I love, you know, there's a big part of me that really wants to not let that happen.
Right. Get some sort of, you know, justice or revenge or whatever, right?
Yes.
But I think it's interesting because, I mean, this has happened recently for us too, is this idea that, you know, being a support system, there's different ways to support people. And one of the things that I really try to be mindful of is creating safe spaces for the people around me. And that doesn't mean fixing all their problems, because I was a natural fixer. That's what I wanted to do, is fix everybody's problems. And so once I started to grasp this idea that safe space isn't about fixing, it's about comfort and providing support in different non-tangible ways. And one of those things is, you know, just simply looking at your partner and saying, hey, I hear you. It's a shitty situation. I'm so sorry it happened. If there is anything that you need from me, let me know. I'm here for you as best as I'm able to be. Right? Yep. But on the flip side of that coin, like you said too, there's also that mindset that says, well, that's your shit to deal with. Don't bring it to me. Yeah. And so I don't subscribe to that. That doesn't align with me at all. Because that feels very irresponsible, frankly, for me anyway, in my life. And so it's not something that I would ever be willing to do.
Right.
But then on the other side of that is that what we just talked about was, I'm going to go beat him up, or I'm going to go fix it, or I'm going to go show him, or I'm going to, you know, protect you and put you in a big, you know, a bubble blanket for the rest of your life. And you'll never feel again. And, you know, you'll never be, we got to find that balance somewhere in the middle there. And that's what that safe space is all about, is allowing somebody to process and deal with their own hurts and their own, you know, uncomfortableness, while also still letting them know that you're there in whatever capacity they might need you to be.
And to recognizing when your own needs to be, you know, held, comforted, protected might be getting in the way of your own growth.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's huge. And that's actually, it's interesting too. I think also recognizing further to that, taking that one step farther, taking that one step farther. Sorry.
Are you okay?
Yeah, a little glitch in the system there. Taking that one. Okay. So I think what also can happen is that we start to depend on our nesting partner too much. And we start expecting them to be there every time shit goes sideways. As opposed to going, okay, wait a minute, is this something that I can deal with on my own? Or is this something that I need help with? And if so, is this something that my partner can actually help me with? Or do I need to go elsewhere for that support? Because maybe, just maybe, this might impact them in a very unhealthy way. Or maybe it's not something that they want to hear. Right? Or maybe it's not something that your partner wants your other partner to hear about. So then you know, so there's
that's a good point.
So there's that boundary there too that you have to navigate around, right? So, you know, if you're going to, you know, let's say, let's just say your nesting partner and your new partner, just for lack of a better. So if you have an issue with your nesting partner, maybe your new partner doesn't want to hear about that, and vice versa. If your nesting partner doesn't want your new partner to hear about it, well, what do? Where do you go? So oftentimes you have to go inward, and oftentimes you have to use yourself as a resource or reach out to friends or whatever it is. So just be aware that using your partners as support systems all the time is not healthy either. So again, it's all about
Yes.
balance. It's all about finding balance, and it's all about creating an effective support system that includes a myriad of tools that aren't just the people that are immediately close to you.
Mm-hmm. Including coaches and therapists.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's and seriously, that's why we do what we do, is because we can provide unbiased opinions, and a safe space for people because they feel comfortable, because they don't feel threatened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's huge. That's really, really huge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is just a nice segue into, I guess, maybe one of our last points that we'll cover, which is doing the work on yourself. So a recent post that came up was, how do you get rid of feelings?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get rid of feelings around your partner dating other people?
You don't.
And so you don't.
Just saying, just putting that out there. They don't go. You don't get rid of feelings.
You don't get rid of feelings. Exactly. I think what they're asking really is, how do you process them?
Mm-hmm.
So the big key for me has always been, you go through the middle of the feelings, not around the feelings or under the feelings or over the feelings. We don't avoid the feelings. Don't avoid the feelings.
Yeah, don't ignore them, because they're fuckers. They're going to keep coming back, and you're going to keep getting presented with the same or similar situations until you find a way to manage those feelings. And I don't say that in some sort of willy-nilly kind of way, even though I do believe in the universal truth that that everything that's presented to us is an opportunity. If we choose to look at it that way. But the reality is that it's going to continue to be an opportunity for growth until we take advantage of that opportunity. So feelings don't just disappear. They don't go away. And sometimes, and the really sort of frustrating thing about feelings is sometimes you think you got a handle on them, and then shit pops up again. And you're like, oh, fuck, I thought I dealt with that already. Well, obviously you need to go and deal with it again. You got to come back around, and you got to process it again. Or sometimes you actually did deal with it and everything was okay, but then something else happened that re-triggers those and brings those back up again. And so then you can process them. The hope is that you build up more resilience as you build up more tools, as you build up more life experiences, so that when those feelings do start to come up again, you're not looking at a way to get rid of them. You're looking at a way to process them in a healthy and effective, life-giving way, as opposed to a life-protecting way.
Yeah, good points. So what comes up for me when you say that is, a lot of people give up, Poly, when it gets uncomfortable, because they may not feel that they have those tools, right? So it's challenging, or they give up the relationship because they feel like it's too much. It's an overload of their nervous system. So that's why I think it's important to really have a good, solid foundation in who you are as much as you can before venturing forth. And as you venture forth, continue to do that same self-reflective, self-supporting, self-advocacy that you need to do to live your best life, to be the most authentic version of you that there is. And I always try to encourage clients to not take a tool and try it out for a day and then put it away, but to practice it, to become better at it, to become masterful at it, to have that at the ready for when the insecurities do pop up.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as long as I've been doing this, and I've been, you know, in and out. So I've been monogamous for a good chunk of time, and then poly, or then CNM, and then poly, and then poly, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but interspersed with monogamy. So my nervous system really can do both, but is probably defaulting more to the mono side of things regularly because of society, because of my life experience, because of whatever. So for me, it's probably going to be a lifelong journey, is what I'm saying. It's probably going to be something that I never really get a grasp on. Or if I do, it might, like you said, pop up again in some other way, in some other situation, with some other partner, right? Like, I don't know. I can't predict the future. So I think we're never quite done the work.
Yeah, you were always doing the work, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because two things come up for me as I hear you explain it, hear you share that, and thank you for sharing that, by the way. The first one is make sure. So one of the things that really helped me in my journey was to get clarity on why. Why am I polyamorous? What does it do for me? Right? And sort of almost create like an elevator pitch in your head as to why you're polyamorous. Not just because you're going to get asked that question a lot by mono people once you start to talk about it with them, but also because it helps you to understand yourself and your motivations during, you know, those wonderful and great times, and also those not so wonderful and not so great and very uncomfortable times. And then further to that, get clarity on your values, on your core values. Understand, and if what you're doing isn't in alignment with those core values, then either figure out a way to get it in alignment with your core values, or reevaluate your core values, right? Which is the work that I do and that you do with clients. That's where we start. That's the foundation, is getting a good sense of your core values and what's your motivation here. What's your why behind being poly, right? So those things came up for me when I heard you sharing that story, right? And then the other things that comes up for me too is I am so fucking grateful for our experience. As uncomfortable and as challenging and as hurtful as it's been sometimes, I am incredibly grateful for the experience because I feel so much more confident. I feel so much more in my truth. I feel so much more empowered than I have ever felt in my life. And I owe a lot of that.
Fantastic.
Right? But I owe a lot of that to poly. Even though I wanted to give up a shit ton of times. I wanted to just, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it because it's too painful, because I'm going to get hurt, or I'm going to get this, or it's too much, right? And there were times where it felt like it was too much. And there was a time where you and I stepped away from it and we were monogamous for a while.
Yeah.
Right? But like you, I think I've always been poly. Like I personally, I've never had a long-term monogamous relationship, because it's always ended up being non-monogamous, whether that was consensual or otherwise.
Right.
So for me, the challenge and being so open and so transparent and really digging in and doing the work has been like so impactful and so huge. And if you're considering it, and if it's something that you want to do and you're new to it, but you're really, really afraid and really scared, that's okay. That's perfectly okay. Whatever you're feeling, whatever's coming up for you is perfectly okay, perfectly natural. And there is no right or wrong way to do it. You just have to find a way to step into those feelings and as you said, work through them, as opposed to trying to ignore them or steamroll them or go up, down, around, whatever. Nope. The only way, as to quote Alanis Morissette, the only way out is through, really. Right? And so that's the truth. And I guess, I don't know if there's something else you want to add, but I think that's where I would love to leave it with people is, if you're stepping into this exciting and beautiful new journey with non-monogamy, wherever you are on the spectrum, with, you know, consensual non-monogamy, whether you're looking at doing some swinging or whether you're looking at doing relationship anarchy or wherever you are, it doesn't matter. I wish you all the best. It's super, super exciting time for you, and just give it everything that you have and find clarity around the reasons and the motivations for it. And I feel like you would be successful if you did that.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that I would add is make sure that you're doing so with integrity. And that's the sort of ethical piece. So a lot of people use the term ethical non-monogamy, and that's why. So that there is transparency with all partners about all things. And when I say all things, I mean what they're comfortable with hearing, what they can receive from you, and also what they are willing to have you share with other partners about them. Consent is huge, and we've got a whole podcast on consent too. But I love where you left that. That was really a beautiful statement. It is challenging, and sometimes people are really afraid when their partner broaches the subject to them. And it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to ask questions. Read lots of books. We highly recommend Polysecure by Jessica Fern. And get educated about what it is that you need to know before you embark, if you can. And if you've already started and you feel undereducated, that's okay. Get started. No time like the present.
That's right. Absolutely.
And feel free again to reach out, and we'll send you the list of the 26 items to consider.
Yeah. And also feel free to reach out to us. I mean, this is what we do. We coach people. We help them. We guide them. We support them. And we would love to work with you. So feel free to reach out to us. We offer 30-minute discovery calls for free. So you can go to our websites. All of that information is at the end of the podcast. And you can also find it in the link trees that we provide on all of the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts and stuff. And we would love the opportunity to help you, because we've been there. We know what it feels like. And while we may not know your unique experience specifically, we can certainly understand it and help you through it and guide you through it.
Yeah, for sure. Because we've had such a variety of experiences too. You know, seen it from all angles.
Yeah. Been there, done that.
Kind of, yeah. There's a lot of like, oh yeah, that sounds so familiar. I did that.
I have a question. Though. Did we get any fucking t-shirts? You know, been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Oh. No,
Anyway.
we didn't get any t-shirts.
Well, we
should get Empowered Now t-shirts.
We should, absolutely. Hey, there we go. You heard it here first, folks.
Okay, that's a whole other thing. We've got to that means like setting up shop on some website. I'm not sure I'm up for that.
Yeah. Soon.
Coming soon.
Ish.
10 years from now. Oh yeah,
right.
We said we were going to get t-shirts.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay.
Shall we wrap it up?
I think we shall wrap it up.
All right. And remember,
choose love
and keep it kind.
We'd love to hear your comments, questions, or topic suggestions. And remember to subscribe.
And you're invited to join our Facebook group, Empowered Now Relationship Support and Advice for All.
You can reach out to us on our websites at gregmillion.com
and leannemillion.com,
or follow us on Instagram at gregmillion.lifecoach
and at Leanne Million.
We've experienced a lot of challenges and frustrations in that. So we're sharing this today because we want people to not,
because we want people to not.
Yeah, exactly. We just not. Just don't.
Just don't.
Just
don't fucking be
right.
challenged.
Right.
Good luck with that. It's your chair situation. Did you solve your chair? You did. You got a new chair. How is it?
It's great. It's good. It's much better.
You like it?
Yep.
Okay.
It's firm.
Is it?
It's firm. My
Your
chair is so firm.
Your chair is so firm. Oh, there he goes. Are you going down? It cracks me up, man. Are you on your chair right now doing this?
Yeah.
You're doing a cool little like Kilroy was here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I can't get back up.
Well, all right. So let's start.
You're gonna have to do it over. Don't kill me.
What?
How's your screen set up? Because my screen's set up with you big and me small. Are you
Yeah, I
side
got
by
a
side?
duo. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay.
It ain't my first rodeo. You
I-
know,
Sometimes we forget. That's all. Just saying.
we meaning
Sometimes we forget. That's all I'm saying. I'm not gonna say anything more.
okay. It's true. Sometimes we do. Do you have a coaster for your cup?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Sometimes we forget.
Right.
Okay. All right. Ready? Ready? Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2. Hi, and welcome to episode 12 of Empowered Now. Our advice for fuckity fuck. Okay, ready? 5, 4, 3, 2. Hi, and welcome to episode 12 of Empowered Now. Our advice for those who are new to Poly and CNM. I think we're calling it advice for fuckity fuck. What are we calling it? Advice for Poly and CNM newbies. Okay.
There you go.
5, 4, 3, 2.